Good evening. My name is 𝙊𝙛𝙛𝙞𝙘𝙚, Secretary in BCIC. I welcome all of you for today's introduction on Demat of share, a window of opportunities. Speaker is Mr. S. Giridhar, General Manager, Integrated Registry Management Services Private Limited. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone present here. We would like to thank the Chamber for giving us this opportunity to present ourselves before the general audience here. So,
Thank you. This event is organized under the aegis of Corporate Economic Affairs and Legal Expert Committee of 2024-25. The chairman of the committee is Dr. K.V. 𝙊𝙛𝙛𝙞𝙘𝙚 and co-chairman are Mr. D. Ramprasad, Mr. 𝙊𝙛𝙛𝙘𝙚 and CA K. Vishwanath. We thank our annual sponsors. This event is on hybrid mode and the participants have joined physically as well as online. I request all the participants to switch off their mobile during the session and post your questions in the chat box. Now I request our chairman, Dr. 𝙊𝙛𝙛𝙞𝙗𝙚, to deliver the welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyam. Welcome. Good evening, all. Hearty welcome to this hybrid session on Demat of shares, which is mandatory for the public limited companies and also for private limited companies other than small companies. As you know, there are a lot of noise in this subject. At least 3 months back, everybody were time bound, and 30th September was the date given. I think all the R&T and the depositories, LSD, CDSL were all very busy about this. That's why we have hired Giridhar to talk about the process, the nuances, the advantages about this Demat of shares. He will run through the whole thing, and we have a FAQ available after his speech. People can question if they have any problems in dematting the shares, or if they are stuck somewhere. He might also be able to help you where to approach, who to approach, how to solve it. So on to you, Mr. Buhler.
good evening, everyone. We'd like to thank the Chamber on behalf of Integrate for this opportunity to present ourselves before the learned members of this. So, as 𝙊𝙛𝙛𝙞𝙗𝙚 sir and 𝙊𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙗 sir rightly pointed out, Demat is now a major requirement in the industry as far as any organization is concerned. So, with Demat being in place now, we are primarily here to tell you a broad view of what is required as far as the process flow is concerned and how to take it forward and what are the challenges currently we are facing in the whole process. So, with this, I start my presentation. So, we will not dwell much about Integrated. So, Integrated is a known name in the R&D field. So, we go ahead and start quickly, give you a brief introduction about Integrated and then start with the subject. So, if you see, Integrated is we are celebrating our 50th year this year, and we are a trusted and leading name in financial services products. So, apart from being the corporate service provider in terms of registration, we are into multiple activities. Like we are the largest processor of PAN applications in the country, and we are the largest processor of TDS returns in the country. And apart from that, we are one of the leading depository participants in the country. So, we have a multifaceted business. So, that is our brief about Integrated. So, 50th year is 2024 November was our year of incorporation, and we are celebrating our 50th year. Now to go about this Demat. So once we say Demat, there was a circular in 2018 which mandated all public limited companies which were not listed to compulsorily demat their shares. So this was the start where the government gave an indication that going forward, Demat of shares is going to be a compulsory process for any entities which are going to be present in India doing business as far as the government of India is concerned. So gradually, Demat of shares for public limited companies picked up, And in 2019, there was a circular from Ministry of Company Affairs which said that companies, public limited companies, which are wholly owned subsidiary of any companies, need not demat their shares. So that put a break to a certain extent on major of the demat process for public limited companies. Slowly, from 2018 to 2019-20, even in 2018-19-20, if you see the volume of demat, it was steadily picking up, even despite there not being any regulatory requirements, because ultimately, when investment was coming inside the country, the investors were insisting that the shares be held in demat form by them. So demat was still doing very well in 2018-19-20, in spite of not being regulatorily required, because it was perceived to be, and is definitely a sign of a good corporate governance in form of any company. So what happened in 2023? 2023 was a hallmark year as far as demat of shares regulations in the country was concerned, because the regulator here in form Ministry of Company Affairs stepped in and said that all companies which are private limited by incorporation have to compulsorily demat their shares. And the definition was given that they were classified into two types of companies. They were classified either as big companies or small companies. So what was big company and what was a small company? They said that any company which had a capital in excess of 4 crores or a turnover which exceeded 40 crores in the preceding financial year balance sheet which they had, and they were classified as big companies. So companies which are falling under the definition of big companies had to compulsorily demat their shares on or before 30th September 2024. So with this, the depositories were given a mandate by the regulator, and the SEBI was asked to supervise the whole process to ensure that the demat process went on in the country, and all companies which are non-small in nature completed with demat by September 30th, 2024. And when we say demat, it doesn't mean that only we end up with only the company providing the facility to the shareholders. Because whenever we say demat, we talk in two terms. One is the company providing its shareholders the facility to demat their shares. For example, there is a company called A Private Limited. A Private Limited has to provide the shareholders the facility to demat their shares. And shareholders of A Limited need to have a demat account, enabling them to hold the shares of A Limited in A Private Limited in demat mode. So keeping this in mind, another scope of opportunity which came out in the market was all shareholding entities in private limited companies which are not small in nature needed to have a demat account also in place. So prima facie, two major requirements emerged in the market. One was obtaining ISIN for all private limited companies which are non-small in nature. ISIN is a short form for International Securities Identification Number. So it defines a particular instrument issued by the company, primarily equity shares, and subsequently any other type of instrument like preference shares or any debentures or any types of warrants or any other hybrid instrument issued by the company. Demat account is primarily similar to a bank account where people can hold shares of any company inside the demat account in an electronic mode. So one primary requirement was getting the ISIN. The other primary requirement was shareholders having a demat account. With this, there came another third opportunity for the whole market, where we started realizing, and the market per se in a large number started realizing that shareholders needed to have PAN numbers in place for them to open demat accounts. And especially in the southern states of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and to a very great extent in Maharashtra and Gujarat and Delhi, it was found that there were many companies which are subsidiary of a foreign entity incorporated in India, and these companies were held by foreign shareholders. So still date, these foreign entities did not even have a PAN card in India. And prima facie, the requirement of opening a demat account in India was having a PAN card also in place. So a three-pronged requirement crept up in the market. There was a huge requirement of ISIN, an equally huge requirement of opening demat account for shareholders. And even the PAN numbers, if we estimated, we could find out that nearly 99% of the market, which was required to comply with this law, did not have a PAN number for its shareholders, barring Indian entities which had Indian promoters or Indian shareholders in place. So these were the three major requirements which crept up once the circular came into place in 2023, somewhere in October. So next slide, please.
Just one question. So other than small companies, what it says. What's the definition there?
The definition of a small company is you should not have crossed a turnover of 40 crores or your capital should not have gone beyond 4 crores, your issued capital.
Yeah, right. So those are companies we have to compulsorily demand.
Correct, sir.
And anything below that threshold is okay.
So anything below the threshold is okay. And another major requirement was if you are a subsidiary of any company or you hold any subsidiaries, then you are automatically considered as big companies. You are automatically considered as big companies.
That's this thing there which is now mandatory demand for all private limited companies other than small companies.
Other than small companies.
What happens? Threshold process. Immediately I have to, or I have a time frame to
See, this amendment to 9B, which is the act, if I'm not wrong, is the act with the Prospectus Act. It does not give clarity because it has fixed a ballpark date of 31st March 2023 to determine which companies are small and which companies are large based on the balance sheet and their capital flow during the year. But in our interaction, because we have been regularly interacting with the Ministry of Company Affairs through NSDL, CDSL, and the Registrar Association is called RAIN, Registrar Association of India. We are, and the association also been constantly engaging with the regulator. Regulator is of the view that the threshold date is just a ballpark date. It is not a mandatory date. If any company over a period of time evolves as a big company by way of increase in turnover or way of increase in capital or way increasing its by having a subsidiary or in itself becoming a subsidiary of any company, then that threshold does not apply. You immediately become a big company. That is what is the. There are contrarian views to this, but there have been no clear specific guidelines mentioned in the Companies Act. So our suggestion will be to err on the safer side. So if you become a big company during any phase after the circular being enforced, then you please consider yourself a big company at that point of time and proceed with dematerialization of the shares accordingly.
So you can question. Sorry. Yes. No, so this is an condition or condition?
Or can be.
Either of them.
Either of you breach either of them, it's a work.
And what legal consequences? Because now you have a cutoff date. Some companies may or may not.
I may have the questions.
Okay.
No, finish it up. We'll have a reference.
Next. So once this news spread in the market, the initial flow was very slow. You were hardly getting 50 companies a month with the depositories. Because before the circular came, the number of companies, we have a proper study done by the depositories to determine how the volume has crept up immensely. Before the circular came into play, the depositories used to receive around 60 to 70 requests for admissions in a month. So hardly they have not seen beyond 200 admissions a month since inception in the depository system of private limited companies. Forget about public limited, private limited companies. Never ever there has been a figure of 200 plus in a month. With this advent, July, August, September, this last June, July, August, September, the number of companies proposing or making applications to admit themselves with depository on a per day has touched around 1,500 per day, 1,500 to 1,600 applications per day is the volume the depositories have had. So when all this came into picture, the first point of contact for all companies became either their in-house secretarial teams, which private limited companies generally have a very weaker presence because it is not a requirement per se. And the brunt started to fall on the practicing professionals because they were the sole point of contact to the company. So when practicing professionals started getting the number of inquiries they were getting started to increase from the practicing professionals, quickly everybody started to find out what, because everybody knew what it was, but nobody was confident enough to say what exactly is required to turn around this whole picture, except for the R&D agents who are present in the market. So quickly, NSDL published its FAQs, CDSL published its FAQs, and a general consensus was drawn among the practicing professionals that a broad level engagement with NSDL and CDSL is required. And coming to NSDL and CDSL, all of you might be aware, but with benefit of larger audience, in India there are two government-controlled depositories. They are known as National Securities Depository Limited and Central Depository Services Limited. These are the two major depositories in the country. A depository per se is similar to a bank. You can call them the Reserve Bank of the depository system. There are two Reserve Banks sort of entities in the depository system. They hold all Demat accounts present in the country. And any action in the Demat account has to happen through the depository system. In India, unlike the whole world, in India, the depository system is structured in such a way that any activity in India the end user cannot directly interact with the depository. For example, you need to have a Demat account with NSDL or CDSL. You cannot approach NSDL or CDSL directly to open a Demat account. You need to approach to somebody called a depository participant to get that Demat account open. Similarly, a company wants to obtain an ISIN. You cannot directly approach the depository for an ISIN. You have to approach to somebody called a registrar and transfer agent. So, India has a unique structure where intermediaries are present in large numbers. There are majorly 4 or 5 intermediaries present in the whole system. One is the depository participant, one is the registrar and transfer agent. Then there's a third intermediary called clearing agent. Then there's a fourth intermediary called broking houses, which are directly interacting with the depository system through their stock exchanges. And fifth is the stock exchanges themselves, because they are totally dependent on the depository system for the trades to be settled in full. So, when so many intermediaries are involved, the companies started to develop. There was primarily panic in the market, which we could see, because companies felt the process was too complicated, and especially companies which were subsidiaries of foreign companies in India. The home officers felt that this was an extra compliance burden on those companies. So the depositories allayed the fears. They went fully digital as far as the ISIN process is concerned. They said that there will not be any paperwork involved anywhere. The whole process will be driven through an online system by the depositories. And any signatures, the signatures will happen through DSC. It will not be a physical signature. So these are the major entities apart from the RTA who are involved in the whole process as far as the system is concerned. Now, with these depositories only, you will be able to, with these intermediaries only, you will be able to take the process fully further as far as Demat or shares is concerned. All these entities are involved. Stock exchanges are option in nature. In case a company is listed company with a stock exchange. Next one. This slide needs to be zoomed.
Oh, you can't.
See, this is a major. When the panic set in the market, people were apprehensive that how big is the documentation list going to be. Fortunately, depositories had clearly cut down their documentation list well in advance itself. It was not that they cut it down in 2023. From 2018 itself, the documentation list had been severely cut down by the depository. Earlier, depositories used to have nearly 8 forms for an ISIN application to come in. Now they have done away with all forms. There are only 2 forms called master creation forms. These forms are called Part 1 and Part 2 forms. So any company which is wishing to admit itself with a depository will need to fill in only 2 forms. These forms are called Part 1 and Part 2 forms. Both NSDL knows it as Part 1 and Part 2. PDSL knows that Part A and Part B. These Part 1 and Part 2 forms are Part 2 forms as far as both depositories are concerned. Are nothing but they collect primary data of the company. Part 1 contains the demographic details of the company along with the director and KMP details. So Part 1 is primarily a demographic form of the company, and Part 2 is nothing but the shareholding detail of the company. So these forms are put together are totally 8 pages long, and any company fully which is compliant in nature should not take more time to this. It hardly takes 1 hour to fill this form. Apart from this, there are only 7 or 8 major annexures which are required as part of the documentation. These are not any executable documents. For example, we require audited balance sheet of last 2 years, MOA, AOA, and net worth certificate drawn on the last audited balance sheet. There is one simple undertaking which a private limited company has to give on the record of the company. And subsequently, there is one clause. For example, your current audited financials, if I presume it is 31st March 2024. Any capital increase post 31st March 2024, you have to provide the relevant ROC form in terms of past reform is what the technicality, the form is called, which will give you the increase in capital details along with the acknowledgement of that form being filed. Then there is a simple board resolution which the companies have to pass to confirming their admission with NSDL and CDSL and appointing the registrar and transfer agents. Then there's a list of authorized signatories as per the BR, where a specimen signature of the authorized signatory is taken. Then there is a freeze and unfreeze restriction. This is one point I would like to dwell upon before we proceed further. There is
AOI should be amended, right?
Depositories are of the view that AOI need not be amended. They say AOI cannot overrule a act of the Companies Act. So they say AOA amendment is not no. So many companies have admitted where AOA amendment has not been, they're not because correctly that's a correct view also. Though I am not a company secretary professional, it doesn't, any act is superseding the AOA in a very clear.
It is better to have it out.
Yeah, I mean,
Alternate your own course. It
Yeah.
is not inhibit your.
not necessary for that.
So that requires about.
Correct.
So this is it getting for ISIN number, sir?
Sir,
This document for
this
getting
document is for ISIN number, sir.
ISIN.
ISIN.
This is due date for 30th September.
Sir, the due date was 30th September.
Okay. One that fulfill after is there any due date is sir?
Sir,
No, we got that ISIN number before 30th September. Okay.
okay,
So after that, our companies and we are the subsidiary to foreign companies, sir.
okay.
So for that Demat account, we need to share that.
Correct.
So for that, is there any timeline is there?
For that, there is no timeline. The rule is very simple, sir. Somebody asked what the penalty was in case you did not comply with the September 30th deadline. Two things are very clear. When the list was drawn up by the ministry based on the data, because one round of strike-offs had happened during the COVID times where company had not complied. So they had struck off huge number of companies during the COVID cycle where companies had not complied. Subsequently, they estimated that they were nearly, when we were speaking to who and who's of the depository, they were saying that the estimate was that there will be around 1.6 lakh companies in India which will be considered as non-small companies. Companies have to be. So as of September 30th, 35,000 companies have only got ISIN numbers from their depositories. And still there are around 1 to 1.5 lakhs companies probably which have yet to get their deposit.
Why is the delay?
That next slide I will come to you. So compliance is getting the ISIN. Once you get the ISIN, you cross September 30th. How does the law work? The law is very simple. After September 30th, you have to do any transfer of shares in the company. The shareholding has to be converted into Demat. Not only the shareholding of the transferring person or the transferring entity, in other terms, the transferor, should have been in Demat. All promoters, KMPs, and director shares also have to be converted into Demat before you can effect any transfer in the company. And subsequently, the other major roadblock which the Act has placed is you cannot increase your capital per se till you have completed the Demat process of existing KMPs, directors, and promoters. So this was and when we reiterated, because all of us were under severe pressure on September 30th because of the huge number of papers which are pending with the depositories. And currently also the papers continue to remain with the depositories. Depositories constantly engaged with the MCA, and we also had a meeting with the MCA where we were one of the intermediaries. MCA clearly said that currently they have, the circular does not talk of any penalty explicitly. They say there is a compliance called PA6 form which you have to file every half year, wherein you have to put your ISIN number. So the first phase of PA6 forms have gone on November 30th. So those forms, a lot of companies have not been able to file for two reasons. One is they don't have the ISIN number. Companies where they have ISIN number, shares have not been converted into Demat. And it still talks of the shares being, why the shares have not been converted into Demat. There's a question there in the PA6 form also. So currently, MCA, this is what our understanding is. They are not going to levy any penalty in the near future, at least for another half yearly, allowing companies to settle down with the whole procedure. And they say, even in 2018, when the public limited circular was issued, they gave that precedence as an example. And the public limited circular was issued, they said that there also, not even one company has been penalized. Only the flow of capital has been restricted for that company. And the company has not been able to transfer any shares in Demat. But probably 6 months down the line, after the next half-yearly filing of PA6 is there might be a wave of actions being taken by the regulator. Currently, in the foreseeable future, at least I do not personally at a personal level perceive any penalties or levies from the statutory. But it is in our interest that we expedite the process, keep the shares converted into Demat, and then go ahead and whole process. Then the other major, we were stuck at this unfreeze and freeze. In Companies Act 2013, there is a requirement which says that prior approval has to be taken by the board of the private limited company before any shareholder can transfer their shares. closely held companies, shareholders were in control, no transfer of shares could be used. There were certain companies in which shareholders were there who were not in good terms with the existing promoters or promoters envisaged that there could be a position where transfers could happen without any, because in the depository system, there is no inbuilt mechanism where you could restrict transfer of shares once they are converted. So depositories came out with a provision where they place a freeze on the ISIN level, which could prevent any unauthorized transactions happening in the ISIN of the company. So that was this unfreeze restriction which came in. Then RTA appointment is just a technicality. GST certificate, PAN and TAN copy every company has. Then there was a tripartite agreement which the companies had to enter with NSDL or CDSL. Here, all companies have one major question. Two depositories are there. Are we required to make application with the depositories? You're not required to make, as per law, you're not required to make any application with both the depositories. Totally voluntary on the basis of the company to make an application with both the depositories. Either of the depositories is also compliant in nature. Then the next question, correct, of how do you choose between NSDL and CDS? So here we have to bifurcate the company into two companies which are having investors on board, companies which do not have investors on board. So companies which do not have investors on board, please go check with the promoters whether they have a Demat account already. And if they have a Demat account already and they are willing to use the same Demat account to hold the shares of their private limited company, then that depository should be the choice of the promoter of the company. For example, promoters hold with CDSL, promoters hold with NSDL, we go with NSDL. In case there's a mix, then you have to again take a call internally to see whether you want to go with NSDL or CDSL. Because going with both depositories to the company is not cost effective. It is expensive because they end up paying fees to both the depositories. Whereas opening Demat accounts are literally for, at least for individuals, it's literally free in the country currently. When there were investors in place, there are major numbers are huge. Some companies we are having as high as 300, 400 investors inside a private limited company, at least 60, 70 investors inside a company. Here, you have to study the mind of the investor, then take a call whether the investors are willing to open a Demat account or the company has no choice but to go with for the depository. So we have had instances where we have told the company to check this, they are told they have checked, they have gone with NSDL, the promoters have a Demat account with CDS. Then they had challenges again. So this is a very critical step. Selecting the depository is a very critical step. So you will go ahead and select the depository as determined by the necessity of the shareholders of the company. Next. Now, this is where we wanted to speak little elaborately. Currently, as of September 30th, there were nearly 35,000 companies which were admitted in the depositories. Applications till September 30th were flowing at around 1,000 to 1,500 applications per day. And how did this period of 11 months or 10 months the regulator came out? How was it computed? The depositories were called for a meeting by the regulator and asked 1.5 lakh companies, how much time will you require for you to Demat? Ministry MCA, Ministry of Finance, everybody sat down and asked this question to the two major entities involved in the process. They gave them a picture of 1,000 ISINs per day. So roughly 3,000 to 4,000 ISINs per month. So both depositories put together 90,000 ISINs in a year was the figure. And they said they would ramp up their capacity to improve. They were confident of delivering 1.25 lakh ISINs in the period of 12 months. That is what the figures the depositories gave out to the regulators. So that is how the regulator came out with the period of 11 months. But ultimately, once the paper started hitting, three major flaws came out quickly into the system. One is all entities involved, including the RBS, let us not be saying all entities involved, including the RBS, had a severe bandwidth constraint when the paper started hitting them in numbers. Because July, August, September, June, July, August, September, when the paper started, depositories started getting 1,000 papers a day. VS and RTA started getting 150 papers per day. So there was a severe bandwidth constraint across the spectrum, everywhere, wherever the entities were involved. Whether it were the practicing professionals, it were the depositories, it were the RTS, the bandwidth constraint was very severe in nature across the system. And this was primarily because of the last minute rush which we came into the system. Because till June, I was not getting more than 200-250 papers per month. Suddenly it started picking up, and when it picked up really quickly. And fortunately, lean organizations like us, we could quickly rearrange ourselves. Depositories are quite big in nature, so they had their own recruitment policies. So by the time they already had a system and a team in place. That team was severely short-staffed, and they could not cater to the situation very quickly during the period. And another thing which led to the major challenge with those, when the volume started picking, the repository started to think how we handle this volume, because one thing became evidently clear and is clear even till today is this volume is not here to subside. This volume is not here to subside. Now what is happening is, instead of we getting 150 papers, 200 papers per day, depository getting 1,000 papers per day, the volume has now steadied down to 300, 400 papers per day for the depository, because people have come to the view that anyway we are defaulted. So the last minute rush is not there. So the new normal is going to be around 200 to 250 papers per day for the depository. That is going to be the new normal. That is going to be the new normal for the RBS also. I have proportionately my papers are dipped to 50. So this is going to be the new normal, and now depository has a infrastructure where they are able to manage the papers effectively. But what is still, because the widespread hue and cry in the company end at the investor end is things are inordinately delayed. Because things are inordinately delayed because of two things. As of September 30th, they had a backlog of 35,000 applications at their end, which itself were aged by somewhere around 45 to 60 days. As of September 30th, the aging of those 35,000 applications is somewhere between 45 to 60 days. So by the time they cleared, they brought it forward, and currently in November, they are still behind by 20,000. They're still behind by 20,000 applications. And the depositories have now started changing the system on a very constant basis. There are still continuous changes in the system. The last 45 to 60 to 90 days, in fact, very early September till date, because they have been trying to introduce AI tools to automate the process. All sorts of research has been going on to see how quickly, because the latest news we are hearing from the depositories, probably MCA is going to give them the API to validate the data online. So they might probably do away with DSCs also. Because ultimately, no, depositories also are having unbearable pressure, because I have been engaging constantly the depositories. We have had companies like Google coming to us and asking, seeking admission with the depositories. So depositories could not say they will not admit Google because it's a well-weather company as far as you. So there also the application had deleted. The depositories really had a real good wake-up call, and now the current year from the depository is probably by December 30th, they will be online as far as number of applications are concerned. All applications which are left with them with varying an aging period of 15 to 20 days will be applications which are having observations at the depository. So we expect certain normalcy to return by somewhere around December. When papers which are left in the market, the only papers which are having observations at the depository. And so from there, what was the before turnaround time is they were turning around papers within week to 10 days for companies admitted with the deposit system. We expect that to taper down to around 15 days in year December. So that will be the constant. It is not going to come below that until there's a drastic overall of the their processes, which might take some time until the API is rolled out by MCA, because MCA versions itself are facing challenges now. They are constantly upgrading. So MCA sought some time for the depositories to share data through an API mechanism. Once that is in place, we will probably see it coming down to 7 to 10 days. So currently, you should all understand that currently we are still looking at 30 to 45 days for ISINs to come. That too with constant pressure and constant monitoring from the RT end, you can expect it within 30 days. And by December end, probably we should be somewhere around 10 to 15 days. That is what is my understanding. Then the major, we have seen a lot of private limited companies which are 100% well-governed companies. They have proper governance inside the company, excellent teams, excellent support systems. But one area where the companies totally lacked any capabilities was as far as the secretarial teams were concerned, because their secretarial compliance was totally held by their practicing professionals. who used to do. So companies did not need, by law also they did not require to have a full-time company secretary, nor did they, major companies we saw, even bigger companies like, let us say for an example, like company like Unacademy where there's 300, 400 ISIN, they have ran 2 months without a company secretary. So full-time company secretary was not present in the system. Who will handhold the companies? That became a major constraint because ultimately people have questions. Question needs to be answered. If you do not answer questions, how do you get the paper out of those companies? Handholding companies became a major challenge. It became a survival of the fittest, and any RDA who could do the handholding to some decent extent have survived and kept their reputations intact in this whole process. The other major challenge became Demat account because you get the ISINs quickly. The foreign entities need to have a Demat account. As soon as you go to the foreign entities and tell them that you need to have a Demat account, and these are the 17, there are really 17 documents that an overseas body corporate needs to produce for a Demat account to be opened, which includes KYC of their directors. So they said, is there a way we can stop this? We don't want to. That was the first question we started hearing in the market. How do we stop this? There was no stopping. So Demat account opening itself became a task in itself. Apart from ISIN, the burden now lay on Demat account opening also, because you have to answer those questions. And to be very factful, no RDAs or DPS, because these are 2 different entities altogether. So companies had to run to multiple points to get their work done, to engage with an RDA, to engage with a DP. And most DPs were banks like SDFC, ICICI, Axis, IDFC, people at least knew them as DPs. And those people simply do not have any interest in opening these type of accounts. One is by the bandwidth it consumes educating the home office to get the work done and then get the account opened. There is no value addition to their whole revenue. As far as the revenue model is concerned, there is no value addition to the whole revenue from the selling agent work. This is where companies like integrated are an added advantage because we have all 3 products under our umbrella. We are a DP, we are an RD. So we quickly stepped in, built up our own DP teams internally with the DP teams, and we were able to successfully mitigate the problem to a great extent. Another major issue which all of us faced was companies had lost a lot of legacy issues. Once you said you demat, share certificates were not present. We never knew whether share certificates were issued or not issued. Toyota says 1987 certificate issued, don't know where it is. Some companies say I don't know whether stamp duty is paid or not at the time of initial issuance. So the FAQs ran into pages. There were questions and answers which these companies wanted ran into pages. So that is where we had to thank the practicing professionals because they quickly addressed most of the problems. They got in touch with the RDAs, understood how it could be resolved so that it did not impact the company, did not impact the RTA, did not impact the deposit. A lot of solutions were found out. And what I have 18 plus years in the industry. What I have learned in the last 12, 13 months is far higher than what I have learned in my 17 years of earlier interaction with the industry. So whenever we speak in our meetings, we always tell, even this 18 months period has been mentally bruising, physically bruising for the industry, but it has also been a great teacher for the whole industry. Next. All those things came up. So everything came up. When you said you didn't know what was coming up from each company. No company had certificates. Well, literally major companies did not have certificates. So certificates were issued and they were issued in such case that even distinctive numbers were not mentioned in the certificate. Solutions to the challenges. Every problem should have a solution, otherwise we're not going to survive. I would request all people present here who are listening us virtually, whenever you are getting into a situation where investor is coming inside the company, you are required to demat, don't keep the ISIN requirement at the last stage, that is the first step. Because generally what is happening now is, people are working with the investors, all sorts of advisors are on board. They advise on everything, including legal aspects, funding aspects, financial aspects. Ultimately, everything is ready. The money is flown into the escrow account. Then they'll start working on the ISIN. Then they will say, I want the money to be withdrawn tomorrow. The ISIN has to be created in the next 2 working days, which is not the current situation. Whenever you're looking at an investment situation, even if you're currently engaging with certain investors, please ensure that you take the ISIN process also parallelly, because that is a very key important area. It is not coming in quickly, so you'll have to quickly address it. Other major sore point which is now happening is now investors are there inside companies. We have so many companies in Bangalore who have had investors in the last 60 days. All Manicu investors are sitting inside various companies in Bangalore. So we are itself amazed at the quality of investment which is coming inside the country now. You name the investor there inside the country now, especially in Karnataka. So investors lose patience beyond a point, because their only aim is to get the shares in Demat. They're not bothered whether depositories are overburdened, RDAs are overburdened, companies are not over. So whenever you have a situation, particularly in ISIN and Demat, constantly engage with the investors to appraise them of what is the timeline being looked at, and please the timelines with them. And the next major thing is depository. There's something called a first time return policy. Whenever you submit a document to a depository, if it goes through the first time, it is quickly done without any rejection from the depository. The process is slightly faster. So that can only be achieved if the quality of the documentation which is being sought is of very high order. The RBS are doing their best. The practicing professionals are doing their best to improve. Because the first question, whenever there's a rejection from a depository to a company on a paper submitted by them, why you people did not tell us that this is going to be the rejection from the depository? You are waiting to see whether our papers are not. Yes, deposit. But unfortunately, depositories in India have a mind of their own. And currently, depositories are increasing their manpower manifold. So the quality of trained manpower at depository is also slightly now. It is not at the expected levels. It is picking up. So there are many unique rejections which we are also seeing. Saying DSC signed document, seal is not present. You cannot affix a seal on a DSC signed document, obviously. So it's a naive observation that sometimes comes out from the. But we cannot go and tell them that this observation. We are constantly engaging, but the quality of the paperwork should definitely needs an improvement as far as the industry is also concerned, so that there is no first time returns as far as the depository is. The other major problem which companies are facing is, especially wherever investments are coming in. Major investments in the companies are happening through secondary instruments, like convertible instruments like debentures, non-convertible instruments like debentures, convertible preferences, non-convertible preferences. So merely getting an equity ISIN does not solve your problem. But go ahead and see what type of ancillary instruments you are looking at. So draw up your list of ancillary requirements. So what other instruments will require preference shares, or what other instruments will require, and then quickly go ahead and get those instruments also factored into the system to draw an overall turnaround time which can be presented to the investors, and then it can be taken. And other thing which we request all companies is to carry out the Demat account opening process and obtaining of PAN card wherever required parallelly, without the ISIN process being considered into. Let the ISIN be one track, let the Demat account and PAN opening be one set of documents. Next slide. So we have seen the sad part of the whole story so far. We have been addressing or seeing what is the challenges, why there are delays. But how does Demat see? When the government said Demat is compulsory, I have been seeing this market for a long time now. Demat per se is very beneficial, and what the government has done is actually a step in the right direction. Though the time frame might have been miscalculated by the all entities involved in the whole. But Demat is a step in the right direction, because ultimately Demat has a lot of things. One is record keeping becomes very negligible at the company end or at the BCS level. All your records are digitized, so you do not have physical records of your documentations anymore. The other major factor for any Demat is any startup you go and any company which has grown, looking to allow an exit to. The sentiment of an investor is at highest when the company is properly governed. And one of the major indexes for proper governance now is having a whole ambit of shares, other instruments in Demat mode, because it gives them a sense of confidence that nothing is there in physical. Because we have seen instances in physicals where a same share certificate has been pledged with two different financial institutions. So Demat gives a sense of confidence to the investor, and investors are very keen that the companies have their shares in Demat. Compliance. See, practicing professionals also are benefited in a large way, and they will also agree that once the shares are in Demat, they need not go to the company in any way to disturb them. For example, they need not go to the company and ask what were the transfers during the half year. Has been asked the register of members team. So data has to flow from the company. The company will be preoccupied with its own work. Here, at a click of a button, they'll get the data from the RGA to ascertain what has happened, so that their compliance also becomes easier. Though currently it is a process which is evolving, it will give a lot of freedom to the practicing professionals once this whole process evolves. The other major advantage of Demat process is, all of you might be aware that 23 financial year, that is 23-24, was one of the highest in terms of number of public issues which came out in the country. And by public issues, we are talking of two types of public issues. One is the main board issues which we are looking at, and another is the SME IPO. So currently, Government of India has given a clear-cut mandate to SEBI and both the stock exchanges that SME platform has to be developed at all cost. They have said that a large number of companies have to be listed on the SME platform because the government wants to govern small and medium enterprises to raise capital out of the market rather than getting into a tech sector. Because they feel the more the domestic money is there inside the market, the more stability will be there inside the market. Because there are many factors which have led to that situation. Because if you see, currently we have the highest number of domestic inflows from mutual funds in the market. SME IPOs at an all-time high, because 2012 was the year in which SME IPOs were launched to the company. And the first IPO in Karnataka in SME platform came out in 2019. And current year, Karnataka is estimated to do 25 to 30 IPOs in this financial year. 24-25, Karnataka is before March, Karnataka will complete 24 to 25 SME IPOs currently. So, if a company has IPO plans, you better Demat even if it is not required for you, because it acts. When the process of due diligence kicks in, the first thing the lead manager and the due diligence team looks at it is how is your shareholding, how fast it has been converted in Demat. The earlier the conversion, the total the compliance as far as Demat is concerned, we have seen it nearly takes 45 to 50 days of due diligence. It nearly takes 45 to 50 days of due diligence. And even the DRHP becomes far more easier to prepare, or the red herring prospectus becomes even far more easier to prepare, because the number of disclosures required are very huge as far as shareholding, conversion, data, transfer, everything is concerned. In the DRHP constitutes a huge number of pages in the DRHP. That also becomes very significantly faster. And the reading is also very easier for the investor community. Yes, India has investors who invest quickly, but we are migrating slowly towards a sentiment where even regulator is stepping in quickly, where we will have a lot of investors even in SME segment who will be learned investors. So DRHPs, quality of DRHPs will start playing a major role in the future going forward. And 24-25, we are expecting a huge number of IPOs to conclude quickly. Currently, there is no such advantage. It is an India stamp back which we have. So you issue in Demat, you can go by India stamp. Otherwise, you go by the state stamp. So now we already saw what. Another major solution you will require here is you have to employ technology, and RTA who is technically enabling themselves can provide you solutions better. So we are providing you a technology-based platforms. So these are some of the core activities that registered to issue. I'll leave this for you for reading. So these are some of the major activities in our register place.
So while you were talking, I understood the constitutes are going to do away with yes.
They are going to do away with, see now what is happening, sir, you are uploading certain documents in letterheads of the company, which contain, that is the part 1 and part 2 forms. So the part 1 and part 2 forms might be dealt away with. Only 7 annexes you will probably need to upload. So you put the SIN number, you will get, it is like how companies are getting introduced, you get the PAN and TAN simultaneously. So they want to incorporate the ISIN generation also along with the incorporation of the company. So the major aim is to ensure, because the data which the depositories are capturing are available with the Ministry of Company Affairs already. So the data needs to flow from MCA to the depositories, and that is what the depositories are working and constantly engaging with the regulator to get it done.
Yeah, the floor is open for any questions from the participants. We have another 10-15 minutes we can spend.
Hey, sure, sir.
We also have clients in the entire EU. So somebody wants to do semi-cons integrated as a company which can you guide?
Yes, integrated as a company can guide, sir, definitely. But definitely a SEBI registered lead manager will be involved in the whole process.
Kindly unmute yourself. Somebody is trying to talk. You show the main chat box or anything like that?
No.
ಲಿಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಟೀಮ್ ಮರ್ಚೆಂಟ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಲ್ವಾ?
Can you read? Can someone read? In our company.
You know, company promoters have Demat account with the NSDL, but one of the minority shareholder asked for CDSL as they have Demat account with CDSL and do not want to open one more Demat account with the NSDL. Should we require to get ISIN with the CDSL for a minority shareholder?
If the investor is C, minority shareholder is not a bar from your shares, further capital increase or transfer of shares. But if the minority shareholder is insistent that he needs to keep his shares in Demat and wants the ISIN to be compulsory with CDSL, the company has no choice but to go ahead and make an CDSL.
The next question is, what is the main idea or motive in bringing this provision? Number 2, what is the consequences if the ISIN is allotted but Demat account is still not open? The next one is, what is if ISIN and Demat both are not still allotted?
Correct. See, as far as the circular is concerned, obtaining the ISIN before September 30th is compliance in itself. I don't see any non-compliance if you obtained the ISIN before September 30th. So you're fully compliant with the circular. The consequence of not opening a Demat account but having the ISIN is you will not be able to transfer any shares in the company, or you will not be able to issue any new capital when the shareholding of the KFD directors and promoters are Demat.
The next one is for obtaining ISIN, we made a payment as per circular received from NSDL, but in the tax invoice received from NSDL, the amount mentioned was totally different from what we have paid, which is difficult for us to close the payment loop as problem in audit.
This I will explain. This is another major problem prevalent with the depository. What happens is this problem will mainly come with NSDL, not with CDSL, because what they do is they charge something called an annual custodial fee, which is proportionate in nature. So your approval might have come in the month. For example, your approval came in the month of November. So you would have computed your annual custody fee based on the capital for December, January, February, and March. You would have paid 4 months annual custodial. But by the time they gave the ISIN, it would have come to December, and they would have charged you only for January, February, and March, and retained the balance amount as an advance. In this case, I will request you to approach the depository through your RTA and obtain a ledger balance which will show that as advance, and please park that money as advance in your books also. So that is the only solution.
Bishop Prakash, your question, please.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Giridhar. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a personal question, but I think it also helps others, other larger audience also. I mean, I was holding my shares in Demat account in the 90s with a company called Unicorn Securities. which got closed. And then subsequently, I was not able to get correspondence because I changed my residence and my mobile number also changed. How do I track my shares and then get it transferred to ICICI where I'm holding the current thing? I wrote to NSDL and CSDL, there was no response.
Please, sir, NSDL has a very clear-cut policy on closure of DPs. Whenever a depository participant closes its operations, the shareholders are given two choices. Either they open a Demat account with a new depository participant, transfer their shares to the new depository participant, and close their existing Demat account with the entity which is closing down its operations. Or at an end of a specified period, for where the Demat accounts have not been transferred, the Demat account still remains with the entities which are closing down. NSDL auctions those accounts off, and those accounts are brought by different DPs. So, have you been able to identify your new DP, sir?
No. I have an account with ICICI Demat now, but my old shares I'm not able to track where it is gone, or I'm not able to even identify the DP.
Okay, sir, you can take, we'll try and help you on this, sir. You can take my number off record.
Sure.
I will try and find out where your account is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Giridhar. Yeah.
This one for I opened this. Election number I got it, but I made payment this custodian fees, but I didn't receive the noise copy to.
45 days is the timeline NSDL says from which the ISIN generation to invoice generation, it takes them 45 days. 45 days. The ISIN, the invoices will come to your registered email ID. In case you do not get the invoices, you have no choice but again to write to your RTA. RTA has to license and get you the invoices. The other way is there is something called an issuer portal with NSDL, where you can where you can register with the issuer portal. It's a self-service portal where you will be able to get a copy of all the invoices which they will have uploaded in the portal. That is another solution.
Sir, one more question. What is the relief for subsidiary companies where the shareholders are outside India? And the next one more, what is the main idea motive in bringing this provision?
There is no relief, sir. Per se, you need to comply with. Currently, there is no relief. The subsidiaries are still under the ambit of big companies only. So currently, there remains no relief. So I don't foresee any relief also in that area. More representations have gone from ICICI asking fully owned subsidiaries or wholly owned subsidiaries or companies which are having subsidiaries which are fully owned or wholly owned to be accepted from obtaining ISIN. There has been no leeway from the Ministry of Company on this. So you would have no choice but to go ahead and demand those shareholding of those companies also and get the Demat. Foreign Demat accounts are challenging, but they're not doable. It is not that they're not doable. It is quite doable. It requires little amount of patience and coordination from the Indian company with their foreign partners and a good DP to be available to you so that you're able to open your Demat accounts. The purpose, nobody knows why this was brought in. But as far as I understand, it has been majorly important to track down transfers, stamp duty evasions, and see whether any transfers are major. According to me, is they're trying to see whether any stamp duty evasion is primarily happening, because we are seeing major transactions where stamp duties are either undervalued or not being paid at all. So major concern is stamp duty evasion by the companies. Major. They have data at a single click. They need not rely with multiple entities to get the data. The government gets the data in a single click. There is no stamp duty requirement to convert your physical shares into Demat. There is no
The other thing is with regard to all this PAN and all these things, the main act which talks about PAN, the Income Tax Act, it says only when you are supposed to have a Demat account, you need to have a PAN. This act is forcing us to have a PAN because I want a Demat account. And they are giving an exemption in the form of the tax avoidance for not having the PAN.
Correct. There are a lot of contrarian views in the market, but as put it in the perspective of the subject we are speaking to, any shareholding entity wishing to open a Demat account in India will need to have no choice.
Almost, sir, but we have some two foreign shareholders. Sir. One shareholder is 99%. Another one is one share only. So they don't have any PAN, nothing. That is a two. We are required to two shareholders. That is only one shareholder. Yes, sir. So for that only one share is one company, sir. That company no any transactions, there is no PAN and up and down. Is it required to get the Demat account for that?
You have no choice, sir. We get two Demat accounts.
We have to get it. Because very quite difficult. That is a foreign company.
No choice.
So only one shares.
Any more questions? Purush? Any questions in the chat box? Thank you. So we can conclude the session, and I would request.
I request Dr. Om Prakash, station in this.
Sure. Please join.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We really thoroughly enjoyed your way of presenting the whole thing, all the challenges, as what went through the last 3 months, and also what could be the solution and what are the advantages for the other companies to get geared up for IPO when things are in hot and rush. I think others should also start doing this slowly so that they don't get into the pressure cooker mode and also give the pressure. So I would request Mr. Suprit to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the company.
From the entity point of view, I would definitely agree. The reason being that since they have wanted the same entity for 3 of our IPO, where one they have got it compared to our entitlement. So they are a wonderful team to work with, especially when it comes to lifting or to any RTA. Personally, they have been working with them. Yes. So they are a good to go person. There's a person where you leave a message and they will respond you back within half an hour or 1 hour. So that's the kind of proactiveness which the team also shows.
Good. Very good. And you've been around for quite some time.
18 plus years, sir.
And he's been.
Yeah. Kannan was there.
No, Mr. Kannan was not in the degree.
He is in a different party.
He was with Kari, now known as K.
Okay, so I think it was thank you, Mr. Giridhar. It was a very enriching session and with the clarity and we spelled out the nuances of the challenges of the firm face, how what are the benefits of this and so on. I think it kind of left me it's with lots of clarity which I otherwise did not have, actually, to be honest. So, but thank you again for your time on behalf of the committee and the members. Thank you for your time and we would just give a round of applause for that. Big service, man.
I call this adjourn this meeting and shortly come with new topics. Thanks all the participants for joining and thanks for all the people who come here personally to hear this wonderful session. Thank you.